On today's Hot Sheet, I'm discussing home price growth and inflation by decade in a report on low income home buyers. Today is Tuesday, May 7th, 2024. I am Byron Lazine, and the Hot Sheet starts now. All right, welcome back into the Hot Sheet. If you missed yesterday's Hot Sheet, go back and give it a re-listen or a re-watch. Got so much feedback from that one yesterday with Warren Buffett's commentary on real estate agents, as well as the inventory discussion, where we're headed with that. So if you're here on YouTube on the live channel, thank you very much. Hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe if you haven't done that yet already. And let's get into it here. This one, we've got an updated slide. That's probably one of my favorite slides to send buyers who need to be educated, even new time investors who need to be educated on what the future of home prices look like. This slide I've used multiple times in the past on the Hot Sheet, and now it's been updated for us courtesy of Lance Lambert over at Resi Club. It'll be available for you to download easily inside of BAMX, along with all of today's slides and today's show notes. If you're not a member of BAMX, of course, use the link down below to jump into that. We've got a crazy BAMX office hours going on tomorrow. All right, let's take a look at national home price growth by decade. When people ask what's the future of home prices, it's more important to educate them on what the history of those home prices are. If you've got a crystal ball, I'd encourage you to move to Vegas. Go get your Nevada real estate license and just play craps and roulette all day if you can predict the future. You probably wouldn't even have to sell too many homes. Nobody really can predict the future, but the history will tell us a lot about what is coming forward. And that is really reflective in home prices because the history is so damn consistent in what home prices do, what home appreciation and home values do. And this will be likely the outcome moving forward. But as long as a buyer or first-time investor, whatever the case may be, understands that history, they're going to be able to make their own decision on the probabilities of what that home value might be after they stay in that house 8, 10, 15 years. Remember, most homeowners are staying in their home right now 10 plus years. So national home price growth this decade here, as we are just early into the decade, actually, I guess almost at the halfway point, certainly, has already surpassed that of the entire 90s and 2010s. So is this decade an outlier, or does it fit into, what other decades have done? Well, it surpassed the 90s and the 2010s. How so? What does that look like? Here's decade by decade in U.S. home price growth by decade. This is the slide I was referring to. It's my favorite slide when people ask me, what's going to happen to the value of my home? I don't know. The last 4 decades in a row, we've seen home prices go up 40+% outside of the 1990s, where it only went up 30.1%. Wait a minute, that can't be right. The 2000s, home prices crashed. If you bought a house on January 1st, 2000, and you sold it on January or December 31st, 2009, you would have been up 47.3%. Wait a minute. 2009 was a bad market. That was a down market. When you hold a property for a decade, you never lose. I mean, this is the history. When we go back, it's impossible to lose on buying real estate when you hold it long term. If you're trying to do a flip, right now, in certain areas where inventory is going up, you might get caught into a precarious position. If you were trying to flip in 2007, like I was, you could get yourself hurt pretty badly when you're buying high, and then by the time you're done completion of the renovation of the property, prices has changed, market has changed, people are losing jobs, all those different types of things. Remember, when the economy shifts, it happens fast. It always happens faster. For whatever reason, it happens faster than people think. Okay. But when you're a long-term player in real estate, and most buyers who are shopping with you right now are thinking about the long-term future and stability for their family, for their finances. Some of them are certainly thinking about that, to support where they're going to work, their job, to be closer to extended family for all of these different reasons. And when they look at the history, they might feel more comfortable about where prices are today. Yes, this decade they've gone up 47.1, which exceeds the last 3 decades. So you could see a period of home prices being flat. But if you're going to be there 10, 15 years, what do you think the next decade's going to do? When we add the 2030s to this chart, is it going to be up 30%, 45%? Is it going to go 50%? Is this decade going to go 50 plus percent? We've seen an increase, 30.1% in the 90s, and then we're up in the 44% for 2010s, 47% in the 2000s. Now we're back to 47% in the 2020s. I could see this being in the 50s. I could see the 30s being somewhere in the 30s or the 40s or the 50s based on the history of home price growth. What are the 2030s going to look like? If you're going to hold the property for the next 12 years, you're going to be involved in the 30s, right? You're going to see some of the home price run up of the 30s. So what's your home value going to be for fast forward 10, 12 years? Are you going to be up 30, 40, 50%? Some of that's going to depend on the location that you buy in. Buyers need to understand, is this location, this is where your expertise comes in into predicting the future a little bit, understanding the migration patterns, understanding that location better than anybody. Is this particular neighborhood location going to be more desirable in 10 years? Are they able to build right next to this location where I could just move 5 minutes away and really get the same thing or better amenities? Or is this truly irreplaceable? If you think about Hoboken, shout out to all the Hoboken agents, including my friend Jill Biggs. You've got a very tight, densely populated neighborhood. Okay. She really works, and everybody that works in Hoboken works in a small pocket, a really small area. It's maybe a couple square miles where the majority of their deals are. Can you really replace that feeling? It's hard to replace that. Okay. Where I am sitting right now in Naples, Florida, is it, if I want to be maybe west of 41, okay, it's hard to replace that. That's closer to the water. It's definitely hard to replace it if a storm comes through as well, but it's hard to replace that real estate. It's all been built up. They're not making more of it west of 41 between the Gulf Coast and 41. You go between 41 and 75, you got some more options, but that's pretty built up. You go east of 75, you're looking east of 75. I mean, there's always 5 minutes further going to be something else newer and maybe even better, right? Every market is going to have those different dynamics of what's going to be replaceable in 10 years and what's really irreplaceable. What could never be replaced moving forward. Asheville, North Carolina. I was talking to somebody about Asheville just yesterday. I mean, if you want to live in that little downtown area of Asheville, there's not going to be a lot of options for you, right? If you've ever been to Asheville, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a quaint little town in North Carolina. All right, here's the month-over-month home shift in U.S. home prices since 1990. Okay, so going all the way back to 90, you consistently will see something that I think is worth pointing out. Let me just move the slide here to September, October, November. Good market, bad market, and you can even look at the same thing in January. Good market, bad market, strong year, or not as strong of a year. You have lower price appreciation at the end of the year and then going into the beginning of the year in January. And where do you have the most significant? This is nationally. Where do you have the most significant home price appreciation? In every single year, it's March through, say, August, a little bit of September. It starts in February, kind of fades off end of August, September. March to July, it is just that is where that dark blue home price growth is the most significant, the 1%, the 2% months where you see home price appreciation. When do folks get the most appreciation on their home? It's undoubtedly across the country, averaged out March through July, and you can set your watch to it. Somebody recently typed into ChatGPT, when's the best time to buy a home? And ChatGPT said, the spring and the summer months are the best time to buy a home? Really? I know that's when the most people shop. I know that's when you have the most competition. It's also when you pay the highest price. ChatGPT spits out a whole bunch of dog crap. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on these live YouTubes, or I would have right there. And I know sometimes people don't like it when I swear, so I guess I'm glad I said the dog doo-doo. ChatGPT is spitting out all kinds of crap over and over and over again. Nonsensical information. I encourage all of you guys who are using ChatGPT, obviously, be aware of it, use it to your advantage, use it as a framework, all those different types of things. Get comfortable with AI. Don't be resistant to new technology that's going to change your business, all that kind of stuff. Totally get that. I'm not a get off my lawn type of guy, obviously. But ChatGPT is spitting crap out like that. And if you take ChatGPT for being right, as opposed to the macro data, correlate that obviously to your micro data, might be a little bit different in some tourist towns and that type of thing, or second hometowns and this type of thing. But generally speaking, homes are the most expensive March through July. The data shows us that. The history going back to 1990 proves it to be true. But yet ChatGPT says the spring and the summer are the best times to buy real estate. Well, what problem are you trying to solve? Right? Do you like going to open houses when everybody else is at the open house? Or do you want the lowest? Is it important for you to get a great deal as a buyer? If it's important for you to get the lowest deal, well, I'm going to look at this chart and I'm going to say November, December. I'm going to say November, December, January is when I want to be home shopping. Obviously, I get it. There's less inventory during those months. We see that come down November and December every single year. But for the inventory that's available, I'm getting it for a cheaper price. So if price is important to me for a buyer, I need to recognize that. My point is on the ChatGPT thing, there's a lot of bad information right now going through these AI models, ChatGPT being the most popular. So don't let ChatGPT write too many articles for you without a lot of proofreading and editing, because it will say stuff like that. We actually we dumped in the silver tsunami, not we at BAM, but talking about the team in Connecticut, jumped in the silver tsunami article into it. It completely twisted it around and said a whole bunch of nonsensical stuff. It said that it's actually harder to find your home when inventory goes up. This is how dumb these models and young these models are right now. They'll get better, obviously, over time. Here's a 12-month shift in U.S. home prices, according to the Case-Shiller National Home Price Index. So for Uncle Bill, who said prices are going to crash over the last 12 months and has been calling it probably year over year, here you go, 6.4% up. That down number just means, hey, we're not running at a 20% rate anymore. That's healthy. Okay. We haven't seen home price loss, meaning negative home prices since going back to that crash of 2008, 2009 timeframe. Okay. There you go on the last 10 decades. Love that chart there. Home price for the decades. Here's a little home price growth information. The past 20 months up 1.3%, while the prior 20 months was up 34.1%. If you're wondering how U.S. home prices could have only risen by 1.3% over the past 20 months, despite 6.4% year over year, because they had that correction phase experiencing the decline of 5% between June 22 and January 23, when real estate first went into the recession that the industry is currently still battling through. Again, 30% in the 90s, 47% in the 2000s, 44% in the 2010s, 47% in the 20s. A lot of people believe the 2000s were, everybody lost values, and that's just not the case. People that bought early in the 2000s gained 50% near on their homes, even after the bottoming out and the crash. So it's important that folks get educated on that. All of those slides will be available for you inside of BAMX. If you're not in BAMX yet, go ahead and sign up. Use code HOT to get 10% off of your BAMX membership. Every single Friday, we release 3 done-for-you pieces of social media content, as well as 2 video scripts and an email script delivered directly to you every single Friday, as well as each and every single day, the hot sheet show notes and the downloads, the slide downloads like the ones that I just showed you will be available in for you every single day. Here's today's show notes right here alone. The show notes are very useful for your email, text message, scripting inside of your database. All right, we took a look at inflation by, home price by decade, home price growth by decade. Now let's take a look at inflation by decade. Of course, if home prices are going up and our ability to keep them going up or keep them at least affordable is our ability right now to fight inflation. Where's inflation and where has it been? Is this inflation issue that we're going through more normal than we think it is, or is it completely abnormal? Is it something that is, so far the ordinary that we should be ultra concerned? Well, we've already seen more inflation in just 51 months of the 2020 decades than we saw in the entire decade of the 2010s. Okay, so that's pretty eye-opening, but let's take a look at each decade next to each other. Okay, the 2020s through 51 months, we've seen 20.7%. That's more than 2010 at 19%. But if we stabilized inflation over the next 5-6 years, would we be close to just what we've done in the 2000s and the 1990s? I'd say we are. Certainly when you look at the 1990s number, we're talking 29 and 33%. We're running at 20.7% right now. Let's take a look at that on a similar chart. This one will be available for you, of course, inside of BAMX, just like the home price chart. Okay, so when we look at, almost halfway through the decade, where we're at on inflation, we're higher than the 90s, the 2000s, and the 2010s. But if we get to that target number of 2% a year, I could see us fitting right between where we were in the 2000s and the 1990s. Remember, the 2010s was probably even abnormal inflation, I would argue, just based on the fact that we had such low rates for so long, for such an extended period of time through the 2010s due to the recovery efforts from the GFC. Okay, so we're talking about from 2010. Remember where we were in 2010 and that long recovery all the way up until 2020. We had very low interest rates that entire time. Okay, so that kept a really slow growing, stable. We didn't have 2% like when we overheated. Okay, we're talking, when I say low, lower than we are now, maybe more normal than we have right now. All right, 20.7% is where we're at on inflation through the first 51 months. So I think we all agree we can't run at this rate and have a successful economy. Of course, Jerome Powell wants to see this number start to flatten out significantly. But inflation, I mean, when you look on the last, 3.5 decades here, inflation really never flattens out. It's going to go up and to the right. Okay, so inflation is always going to go up. This, to me, is also an argument for why folks should be buying real estate. You attach your dollar, your savings account to that chart, and it does the opposite. It goes down. And during the 70s and the 80s, I mind you, this is what inflation looked like. 104% in the 70s, 64% in the 80s. This is what we're trying to avoid. Okay. The 104% and the 64.2%. So we're not looking for what we saw in the 70s and 80s. By the way, the 70s and the 80s, both were running at a higher rate at this point in the year, in the decade, than we are right now in the 2020s. So when people make the comparison for the 70s and the 80s, we were already ahead of where we're at now. And when you look at the last 12 months, we're getting better, not worse. They were getting worse in the 70s and the 80s. So I don't know, when I look at this kind of blown up, you know, this makes me feel better, that we could start flattening this line out for the 2020s, maybe end up around the 90s or the 2000s in the end. That I'd be cool with that. We're not right now in danger of what happened in the 1970s. Of course, they want to make sure that stays the case. And here you go, just kind of looking all the way back. I mean, the 50s, you can go back talking 14.1% at this time, 26.8 in the 70s, 1980s was 33.8%, and we're running at 20.7%. So going back to the 50s, this is the third highest through the 51 months of the decade, third highest decade on inflation going back to the 50s. So it's an issue, it's a problem, but it's nowhere close to the 70s and 80s. Okay, there you go. That's your update on that decade report for inflation. That'll be available as well for you inside of BAMX. Redfin just came out with a report. Low-income home buyers, low-income Americans have lost the home buying progress they made during the pandemic. Well, I'll also say, Redfin, everybody lost, for the most part, the progress that they made during the pandemic. Low income, middle income, high middle income lost a lot of progress because we were just printing money like crazy, and we had near 0% or 0% Fed target interest rate. We had 2 and 3% mortgage rates. So everybody has lost, except for maybe the ultra wealthy, who always is going to benefit from the dynamics, no matter really what happens. Okay. So low-income mortgage borrowers lose pandemic progress. Very low income. This is the share of new mortgages issued to each income group. Okay. So high income, 2023, more share of new mortgages issued to each income group. Okay. So 2023, you saw high income get more mortgages issued than in 22 or 21 or 20. Okay. Moderate income, same kind of thing there. But while low income, the share of new mortgages went down. Well, what's happened with the interest rate? It's gone up. So if I've got low income and I'm going to buy a house, that pool of mortgages, I'm probably going to go and rent. And that's been something that Jerome Powell's been supportive of. Hey, go rent. We just want to get inflation down. Doesn't care if you're a homeowner or not. And the disparity between renting and home buying has grown. And so, yeah, I can imagine that more people are going to go ahead and take that opportunity. Redfin's income categories. This is straight out of the hot sheet show notes here. Very low income households, 41,000, low income, 64,000, moderate income, 96,000, high income, 172. The estimated median household income, roughly $84,000. By the way, everybody that wants to beat up on agents, the low income households of 64,000, that's more than the average agent across America makes. So take Redfin's report. Redfin has often been not very supportive. They just settled yesterday too for under $10 million. Redfin's not always been supportive of the full-time agent. Um, Yet what they classify as low-income households, 64,000 is more than the average agent makes. Redfin, by the way, settles, just side note, then we'll get back into the Redfin report. Redfin settles yesterday for, I think it was I'll give you the exact number here. We have it up on nowbam.com. You can check it out, obviously, there. Yeah, so $9.25 million agreement. Redfin becomes the 10th organization to settle. $9.25 million entered into settlement, despite the fact that they left NAR. They used the formula that NAR set forth for them to go ahead and settle. Here's the deal. Look at this. So these settlements are based on brokerage's ability to pay. Okay. Home Services of America, Berkshire Hathaway, pays $250 million. What does that tell you about BHHS ability to pay versus Redfin, been publicly traded, been around 20 plus years, been working a model that has had questions around it. What does the $250 million from Berkshire Hathaway Home Services tell you versus the $9.25 million that Redfin paid? It tells you that Berkshire Hathaway Home Services has a lot more free cash flow ability to pay than Redfin. Tells you that they run a much more profitable business with their mortgage and everything else. And it tells you that Redfin just really is like, $9.25 million for a publicly traded company like Redfin tells you that they don't really have any money, is what it tells you, because any more than that, just like NAR argues, anything more than the 418 million, all these brokerages have to submit paperwork and argue the fact that anything more than this number would put us into bankruptcy. The plaintiffs don't want to put them into bankruptcy. So, anyways, Redfin settles for the $9.25 million, tells you that their business model over 20 plus years doesn't generate enough consumer interest to be extremely profitable and have and have obviously enough free cash flow. It also tells you what the future might look like there. Could be some more consolidation. All right, going back into their actual report. I do love their data though. Good data Redfin has from time to time. Low-income mortgage share, roughly 1 in 5, 20.6 new mortgages issued in 2023 went to low-income Americans, down from 23.2%. In 2020. Well, this just makes sense, Redfin. In 2020, when the rates were a lot lower, you're gonna have a higher pool of low income earners jumping into home ownership. Man, I can buy a house for less than rent right now. Cool, sign me up. Today, when I can rent a house for far less than I can go buy a house, cool, I'm not signing up. Okay, I'm gonna go rent, and I'm gonna use that extra money to support my lifestyle, support my family, all of that kind of stuff. You want more low income, earners to become homeowners. You got to get lower rates. It's very rate sensitive. It's very easy to follow the correlation. Here are the metros with the highest share of new mortgages issued to low income earners in 2023. These are going to be the more affordable markets: Minneapolis, Detroit, Philadelphia, Virginia Beach, Baltimore. Metros with the lowest share of new mortgages going to be the highest price points: Anaheim, Los Angeles, Miami, San Diego, San Francisco. Okay. Metros where low income earners gained market share: Chicago, Cleveland, and Washington, D.C. Interesting there. Chicago, Washington, D.C., definitely not cheap markets for low income earners to be gaining market share there. All cash purchases, the prevalence of all cash home purchases has contributed to the concentration of housing wealth among affluent Americans. More than 1/3 of all U.S. home purchases were made in cash as of February 2023, near a high record, with this trend continuing since 2020. That obviously has continued to today. All right. There's your report. There's a bunch more data in there. If you're interested, you can check it out. Obviously, appreciate you guys jumping in here to today's hot sheet. Love for you to jump into the BAM X office hours with me tomorrow. I'll be with Amy Stockberger. If you checked out the webinar, How to Build Lifetime Clients, that we did last week, you're going to love the BAM X office hours, where we go deep inside the BAM X community, ask specific questions, and start to really build out the framework of what this could look like for you, what a network that supports lifetime clients can look like for you. There's a lot of different components to it. I said it on the webinar last week. Like, don't expect to take a 1 hour webinar and learn what Amy Stockberger has built since 2014, a network and a system designed to keep clients for life, to keep clients to go directly to her, as opposed to some of the portals and some of the other opportunities, of course, that they have nationally through technology and otherwise. So if you want to learn more about that, join us, BAMX. The office hours at 3:00. They're always recorded and uploaded into BAMX, along with everything else we do upload into that daily, by the way. Use code HOT to get 10% off of BAMX. Also, end of June, June 25th to the 27th, I'd love to see you at the 1,000-Watt Brand and Marketing Summit. Amy Stockberger, who I just mentioned, she'll be there with me in Dallas at the Brand and Marketing Summit that 1,000-Watt puts on, as well as Eric Simon, the Broke Agent. We've got a link down below for this as well. You can use code BAM to get the lowest price that 1,000-Watt is offering. Answer the wake-up call, the real estate event for those who want to meet the moment with confidence. This is June 25th to the 27th in Dallas. Come hang out with me. Looking forward to seeing you guys there. Subscribe to the channel. If you're new to the Hot Sheet, we do this show every single Monday through Thursday, 9:30 on the East, 6:30 on the West. You will know the deal in between. Hit subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss the only live housing show Monday through Thursday with a 24-hour look back on the real estate industry. I will see you guys later on here on the channel at 2 p.m. for a new Real Word podcast. And of course, again, tomorrow morning for the Hot Sheet show. Until then, of course, toodaloo.